Welcome to the SNY Point Blank TV's Islanders season preview. Really happy to be joined by an unabashed Islanders supporter, and that is Jim Gordon, the great host on NHL Home Ice on XM and Sirius Radio. How are you, Boomer?
I don't know about unabashed, Chris. I don't do a lot of bragging about it these days, but
You are
18
proud.
years, 18 years without a playoff victory will do that to a fan. You know what I mean?
Hey, the Islanders are lucky to have you up in Canada, trying to fight the good fight for the team in New York, the other team in New York that everybody loves so much, the Islanders. When I first mentioned that you were going to be coming on, got a lot of emails, a lot of comments on the blogs from fans. They all wanted me to ask you one important question. I'll have another one for you later, but the big one is, are you over the Islanders draft? I know you were very high on them taking Dougie Hamilton, looking for that big defenseman, but are you okay with Ryan Strome? How did you feel about the draft, Boomer?
You know what? I think it bothers me more that Dougie Hamilton fell to 9 to the Boston Bruins than the fact that the Islanders didn't get him. And, everyone, I always talk about how I feel like teams should build from the blue line out. And I know, they've invested in prospects like Hamonic and DeHaan. But, when there's a defenseman there and people I talk to, people I trust in the scouting business, I don't have enough time to watch juniors play, but I had enough people tell me that Dougie Hamilton was just a genuine article and that he was a great kid and he was a really smart kid, scholastic player of the year. Both his parents were Olympians. It seemed like a terrific story, and he's a big kid. He still had to fill out, and I thought he would have made a tremendous Islander. The other problem I had is with Strome. I talked to enough people that say this guy is the real deal, and I guess he's a YouTube sensation and all, but I sometimes worry about kids that are one-year wonders. People knew who Strome was going into last season, but he wasn't, a front-page story, and then he blew up and had the big numbers. There were a couple kids like that in the draft this year. Winnipeg, 7th overall, took Mark Scheifele. Same kind of story. No one knew who Scheifele was a year ago. You wonder if Strome just put together a great season at the right time, or if he really is the goods. So, I'm sitting there at 5 thinking, okay, we can get a defenseman. I think it also bothered me that the Swedish defenseman Larson fell to the Devils at 4, because I thought that was exactly what the Devils desperately needed. So I think they were winners. I think Boston were winners. Let's just hope Ryan Strome is the latest in a group of good young Islander forwards.
Okay, well, in all likelihood, Boomer, Ryan Strome will be on the team in a year or so, and that's the future. Let's talk about the present of your New York Islanders.
Just make sure it's a year or so for Strome. I don't need any more 18-year-olds rushed up to the hockey club.
I think that's what they'll do. I'm pretty comfortable in that. Boomer, this year, playoffs a possibility. Will they be in the fight till the end? Where do you think they stand coming off the very good second half last season?
Well, Chris, it's fascinating because we've already done a lot of predictions this summer, and it's really hard for the Islanders. It's not hard to look at them and think that they're going to be a better club, that they're going to be a dangerous club, and you can look at their second half numbers and say, well, we were one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference second half of last season. They're saying the same thing here in Toronto. But I guess the question that always comes down to me is, who are you replacing in the playoffs? You can look at 5 teams probably and say, you know what, they've got a pretty good spot. You look at Washington, you look at Tampa, Pittsburgh, Philly, Boston. Those 5 teams are always there. Maybe one of them stumbles this year. There's a lot of question marks. But then you throw in the Rangers, who got Brad Richards. They think they're improved. That's 6. The Sabres spent a ton of money. Whether they're any better or not, we'll find out. But that's 7. You got the Montreal Canadiens is 8. The Devils think they're going to bounce back. Toronto thinks they're better. Carolina thinks they're better. There's only 8 spots, and you could make a case for about 13 teams in the Eastern Conference. Just about the only teams I probably can't make a case for is probably Ottawa right now, who look terrible, and maybe the Florida Panthers, who are clearly rebuilding and have a brand-new roster this year. So if the Islanders are going to take a run at things, listen, I've made a case that you could see potentially all 5 teams from the Atlantic Division in the playoffs this year. You could make a legitimate case for all 5. All 5 of those teams have question marks. The Flyers retooled. Pittsburgh has injuries. The Devils, we don't know what they are. The Rangers, have they got that much better with Brad Richards? But you could make a case for all 5 teams, kind of the way the Pacific almost got 5 teams in last year. But I think the Islanders are one of those teams that are going to be challenging, and we won't know till the last couple weeks of the season.
Before we go to our reader question for you, Boomer, talk to me about the Toronto Maple Leafs. A believer at all? Do you think they? I know you say they're in that mix, but have they improved enough to make the playoffs this year?
You know, there's so many question marks about the Maple Leafs as well. They didn't do what they wanted to accomplish in the summertime. They were able to get Tim Connolly. They paid a huge sum of money for him. I'm not convinced it's money well spent. You know, obviously they were in the Brad Richards sweepstakes. Now I guess he's plan B. But everybody's looking for the guy that can play with Phil Kessel and can set up Phil Kessel. I just don't think Connolly's that kind of guy. Kessel's a skater. Connolly isn't. You know, Phil Kessel likes to use the whole ice. Connolly is just kind of a guy that sets up, you know, on the half wall on the power play. So I'm not convinced that there's any chemistry there. And the other big question in Toronto is the goaltending situation. They brought in James Reimer, who nobody really knew anything about the second half of the year, and he caught lightning in a jar. Now he comes in, there's pressure on him. There are higher expectations. He got a 3-year contract extension, so we'll see if he can live up to the hype for another season. But again, Toronto, to me, again, is another one of those teams on the outside looking in. It's a unique situation in that the coach, well, they added Scott Gordon, the ex-Islander head coach.
And Greg Cronin as well.
Yeah, but Ron Wilson is on the 4th year of a 4-year deal. No extension in the offing just yet, so he's a bit of a lame duck head coach right now. They need to get off to a good start and you know, quell the Toronto media and the fans, because if it started poorly, it could get really ugly really fast.
We end with a question from a reader for you, and that's Mitch from Farmingdale, Boomer, and he asks, which Islander will make the most impact on the team this season? Which Islander do you think will be their MVP? Well, they're the most impact to hopefully get them into the playoffs.
Well, you know how I feel because we've had this conversation many times. And I'm always going to go to the well on this one and take Kyle Okposo. He is a guy I root for. I told you I went and saw him live a couple of years ago in Toronto, and it was the most fun I'd had watching the Islanders in probably a decade. I think he's the real deal. He's not the fastest or the biggest, yet he can maintain the puck and possess the puck. People can't get it away from him. He got a 5-year extension in the offseason. I think it was money well spent by Garth Snow. It's back-loaded. It won't hurt him early. I would look for KO to have a big season after last year was a bit of a write-off. I'm assuming he's going to be 100% healthy going into the regular season. I think an easy answer is Mark Streit because he wasn't there. It's kind of like a nice off-season pickup. So I would look for him to make a difference. And the other guy that's fascinating to me, and maybe I'm sure you know him a whole lot better than I do, Chris, is that we were doing our Islanders preview this summer. Do you know which Islander led the team in ice time last year?
In ice time. Did it wind up being Andrew McDonald?
It was Andrew McDonald.
Hey, I got it right.
Which is fascinating. He played 22 minutes a night last year.
And he played it very well, too.
Yeah, and he's on the books for less than $1 million a year the next couple of seasons. So it'll be interesting to see if he progresses as well. And the other kid, obviously, that I want to watch is Hamonic and see if he evolves into the player that a lot of people think he will be. So, and I didn't even mention Johnny T, and I thought it was fascinating yesterday that the Philadelphia Flyers went with a 6-year extension for James Van Riemsdyk, even though he's got a year left in his entry-level deal, because, you know, anyone can look at Garth now and say, hey, Johnny T is eligible for that contract extension now as well. It'll be interesting to see if that deal gets done sooner or later.
It could be the wave of the future with that deal. Thanks so much for this, Boomer.
Absolutely, buddy.
Good luck at NHL Home Ice. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you, sir.
Jim Boomer Gordon from NHL Home Ice and the Islanders season preview. Stay tuned for more. We'll have some coming up soon.